Let's jump into it. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Diablo Herald episode 11. We've actually made it past 10 episodes. Uh, Diablo Herald is a podcast where we talk about all things relating to Diablo and any issues that might affect us here in Australia or New Zealand. Today we are kind of going to have like a almost a one topic podcast because I think this is probably going to last a while, this conversation. Um, I've heard this conversation happening on a few other podcasts, and yeah, it's an interesting conversation to be had. So basically, it's all about the end game and the decline of players across the Diablo game. There's been a pretty obvious drop. For people who just play the game, you probably noticed that the amount of people in your friends list is less. But I've noticed a drop in interest in the content that we make and just across the board altogether. So it's definitely real. It's not something that's just being made up or it's not just forum people going crazy or anything like that. Um, so I thought we would start with Chet because Chet played the game a lot and now he doesn't so much. So do you want to explain to us why it is that you've stopped, well not stopped, but slowed down a lot your playing of the game, Chet?
Yeah, I think I clocked out about 500 hours total. So not as much as some of the hardcore people, but definitely quite a bit.
It's a lot more than
Um,
me so far anyway. It's probably about double
yeah,
what
and I
I've
think
done.
about 15 million gold picked up. So, I actually played it, walked around, grabbed stuff, but I
Yep.
just got to the point where I couldn't do the item grind farm thing anymore. Upgrades just weren't coming.
Yep.
Or the items just weren't that interesting anymore. And I already beat Diablo, so I didn't really know what I was playing for.
Yep. Can you
Even rolling another class just doesn't feel that interesting as well, because it just feels like, well, you got two tank type classes and three other DPS ones.
Yep. Have you like leveled up any other classes besides the Witch Doctor?
Yeah, I got a monk to 60. I geared him out with gear that I got by farming with my witch doctor. Did Act 1, could sort of do Act 2, and then I just thought, well, what's the point? I'll just farm with my witch doctor, give the gear to my monk, then he can do it, and then just like, what's the point? I'm not really going to play the monk.
Yeah, right. Okay. Um, how easily could you kill Diablo? Have you done it more than once, or is it just once?
I did it once, just before the 1.0.3 patch.
Oh yeah.
But I did it as a glass cannon, so I had like 15k HP, so one hit, you die. It takes just a bit of strategy, and once you work out the second phase, I mean, I could probably do him multiple times. It's just there's no real reason to.
Yep. Okay. Um, cool. What was I gonna say? Yeah. So I guess it's just a lack of interesting things to do. Like there's nothing else really for you to do at this stage. You feel? Is that
Yeah,
it?
I guess it's a bit of that, and I guess probably some things we'll discuss in more depth. It just feels like there's certain issues with the game that need to be addressed, but it doesn't seem feasible to address it without doing like a major revamp, which more than likely couldn't happen anyway.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I guess yeah, for example of that, I guess would be like the stat system. I think a lot of people um, believe that being able to choose the stats that you're building into is a big part of Diablo, and not having that in Diablo 3 takes away that element of actually making builds, and the uh, the fact that you can't change them means that you have to have, if you want different builds in different characters, you actually have to make another class of that, another character of that same class. So um, that would be, I guess, an example of something that they couldn't, yeah, change without completely changing the whole game, I guess. Um, so yeah, um, let's go through. I've just written down a whole bunch of points here. Um, they've actually Bashiok has actually made a post that he said that they weren't actually happy with where the end game is at, and I think a lot of people feel like there is no end game, full stop. Um, it's it's kind of a funny thing because I think it's almost deliberate the way they've done that because I think they didn't want it to be like WoW where there's just end game content that you're playing through, and then once you play through that, you get to the next bit and you play through that. I don't think it's meant to be like that. Do you guys have thoughts on that? Does anyone want to pipe in there?
Go for that.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll,
Uh,
I'll go. I'll go second. I always
okay
go
then.
first.
I think for me it's quite a strange thing that Inferno doesn't feel like in-game content. It actually feels like the only content in the game. Like
Yep,
normal Nightmare and Hell is just kind of leveling grounds, and then Inferno is basically when you start to play properly, look at your skills and stuff,
yep,
actually work on getting better gear. And I think that's a big issue that people are having.
yep.
It isn't quite in game like it was supposed to be. It just feels like the only game content right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, when you compare it to like Diablo 2, did you play a lot of Diablo 2, Chet?
Yeah, I did.
So I mean, what are the differences? Like, I guess the level cap obviously is one of the big differences. Um, and I think the other thing is the itemization. I think that's probably the other problem. You know, the items aren't as exciting as they were in Diablo 2 with Lord of Destruction. You know, things like rune words and items with plus skills on them and stuff. They sort of don't have any of that kind of thing. I suppose that's another example of something that would have to be, you know, the whole game would have to be reworked to be adding plus skill items into the game. Um, so yeah, it's a lot different to Diablo 2 in that way, I suppose. Um, what
What
would you
kept you
consider?
going in the end of Diablo 2, chat? What kept you going when you were playing Diablo 2? What kept your
I think
interest?
I think it was always the item hunt, fighting these really good items, building towards rune words. Like it seemed a lot more interesting and achievable. Like it was fun to get those items and your character would suddenly be really powerful. And even the small item can make a difference. Like if you found a razor tail, you could build 100% piercing sort of Javazon, and that made a big difference to how it played. You don't have that in Diablo 3. I mean, I didn't even PvP in Diablo 2, but I still just had so much fun playing, just trying to find items. Like it was just that much more enjoyable and building new
Getting a
characters and stuff like
getting
that.
an item that you can build a class around sounds like a lot of fun. It's not really something that happens in Diablo 3 because you can just respec your character if you find that item. So that's taking a lot of hours of gameplay out. Did you participate in like Pandemonium events and go for the Uber Diablo kills and things like that in Diablo 2? Because I think that seems
Yeah,
like one of
yeah,
the big things that's missing
yeah,
for me.
definitely. I did those, and those are great. I don't really like how they were tuned. How pretty much everyone just bought a paladin and did it cheaply. It could have been tuned a bit better so that it was easier for all classes and different builds to do it. But it was possible. Just took insane gear.
Yep, I suppose that's something
But
that's
yeah, things like that kind of make it, I don't know, more entertaining. And I think it's also a lot of it is you just kill hordes of monsters in Diablo 2 quickly without having too much gear. Like you could do it cheaply. And it was just fun watching your screen explode. But in Diablo 2, you don't really have that.
hmm Yeah, I think that's kind of what you were saying before is kind of what I expected out of Diablo 3, just like a better tuned Diablo 2 with better graphics, you know. But I guess it turned out a lot different to what I was expecting anyway. Yeah, I think in terms of game mechanics, it's a lot simpler. Um, whether that's a good thing or not. I mean, it's turning out to be a much shorter game, I guess, in terms of lifespan because of that, I think. So,
I think sort of related to what we were talking about with Chet and hedging off what you were talking about, Hugo. I think like the mechanical changes to the game are good, like the way the game plays is so much better than Diablo 2. But I think that leaves as the biggest issue for Diablo 3 for me is the lack of randomized content. Like there's not those massive events, endgame events going on in Inferno where it would be fun if you had like certain areas in Inferno that you had to do certain things to try and get a random event to trigger, and then like more randomized content and more randomly generated levels and things like that made it a bit more adventuring and things like that.
yep.
Just the lack of randomization, even in like the basic designs, like in Diablo 2, you had like when you first start in Act One, and your entrance to your town could be in three different places, and that you can have a different map joining off each one of those. So every time you start a new game, it was interesting.
Yep.
But the same thing's not happening with Diablo 3. There's a little bit of randomization, but for the most part, everything feels like it's the same to me.
Yeah, it definitely feels a lot more linear each time you play through than Diablo 2 did. And I suppose that's just, I guess, a fundamental difference, and yeah, between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. So, yeah. Let's talk about the itemization. Unless you had anything to add to that, Highlander.
Um, I was actually just curious, what you guys actually did in Diablo 2, like in terms of how far you got, just for everyone else's benefit as much as my own, how far you got, how much you played for, when you stopped playing.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I stopped playing probably, well, like, I mean, you never stop playing Diablo 2 completely up until, May 15th. But, I played mainly in Amazon and then drew it a lot. I probably got I probably got 3 or 4 characters to like high 90s. But I always went for like really obscure builds
Yep.
as well. So I never had a Hammerden, but had, I had not to those high levels, but I had an Enchantress.
Mm-hmm.
I had what was it? Had like just the tankiest druid of all time that would never drop below, you know, 90% of its hit points, no matter what happened. Couldn't kill anything, but in a party it was good.
Yep.
And a couple of other like really weird ones like that, like an item find barbarian who looted every corpse and was designed to play in large games and just follow the pack and loot the corpses. So like all sorts of different little random kind of builds as well. So I probably got like 20 characters up to like 70s or so.
Yep.
So I did that a lot, and I played a heap up until they offered respecs. What was that? 1.11, I think it was.
Not sure.
Was it 1-1 or 1-3?
1.3. Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. So yeah, and then I didn't really play very much past that. Not at the end game. But I just think that might give a little bit of insight into the source of our views here as well.
Yeah, sure.
Totally. For me, when I first started playing, I didn't really have the internet or anything like that, so I missed out on all that really more serious, the ladders and all that sort of thing. So I played like a lot of normal characters up to probably like early hell or something like that. Not that far in that, and then pretty much every time I went back, I started new characters. Like I could never pick up an old character that I've been playing. I guess I kind of got fed up with old characters, and because of the restrictions in like build, once you've made a build, that's all you could do. I'd always start new characters. So I think that's kind of why I enjoy Diablo 3 more, because of that flexibility in builds and things like that. But
Yep.
and then more recently, I pretty much played exclusively hardcore, so I never really got that far. So I never had that like high 90s, level 90s end game
Yep.
experience going on in Diablo 2. I missed out on all that.
Yeah, I never got into hardcore myself. Just didn't have the guts, I think.
Yeah, I never got into hardcore. I think I had a pretty on and off relationship with Diablo. I played right from the very beginning, and I had a sorceress that I only got up to like level 80-ish. Um, that's probably the highest character I had. I think I missed a big chunk where um, it started to get really weird builds and stuff coming out. So I think I missed out on a lot of that stuff, and I came in at the end because I would stop playing and then I'd start again with someone who was new to the game, and I'd start a new character, and then I'd stop again, and basically I ended up with like one of every class that was higher than level 50, but I never really got to like level 90. Um, but I did complete the game on hell and everything. Never really played ladders or anything like that, so I didn't get into it heaps. But I did do some pretty weird builds, like um, a barbarian with that was like all shout based. So basically, did all his damage with shouts. That's probably like the weirdest build that I did. But yeah, that's pretty much my experience with the game. So, Chet, how about you?
I pretty much did what most people did. Every time a new ladder came up, it was always fun to jump in when the economy was all rinsed out, and then just start playing again.
Yep.
I pretty much made normally about 5 or 6 characters and got into 90. Played around with the builds. Sometimes I'd have like 2 Amazons, 1 Sorceress, 1 Hammerden, things like that. Pretty standard stuff, I guess. But I don't know. I just kept playing and playing.
Yep.
It sounds like so, and you were really chasing those ladder resets, huh?
Yeah, it was fun to see, where you could be in the game, after a week. And then, I'd always, go for the Ubers and declone and stuff like that.
And you wouldn't I mean, like you weren't really hoping to get on the visible ladder. Oh shit!
Uh,
Sorry.
uh, um, I mean, that's pretty hard in
So
softball
that's
when you
baby
have.
alert. I'll be back in a sec.
Okay.
Okay. No, I mean, it was pretty hard to compete on the ladder unless you're playing with an organized group doing it properly.
Yep.
Hardcore's a different story, but I never play hardcore because the ping kind of sucks from here. So,
Yep. Okay. Cool.
That's it.
Um.
That
Yep.
sort of leads on to an interesting point about ladder resets. Like,
Yep.
how do you guys feel about the lack of ladder resets on Diablo 3? Because it seemed it was pretty big, like Chet said, an economy rinse out for Diablo 2. It's just not happening at all in Diablo 3. So, what do
Yeah.
you guys think?
Like I said, I didn't do much ladder play, so it's hard for me to comment on that. So I'll let Chet comment on that one.
okay. Um, I just don't think it would really work with Diablo 3. Maybe, depending on how long the ladders were, but the gear requirement to actually play in Inferno at a fun level still it's a bit too high. Even Act 1 being a lot easier than 3 and 4, I think players would just get really bored just constantly being stuck in Act 1 all the time, and they would just give up.
Mhm.
They wouldn't ever make it past there.
Yep.
So I don't really think it would be that good for Diablo 3. Just because it does get to the point where you just can't get an upgrade unless you buy it from the auction house, and then
Yep.
I think that's a separate issue.
That's an interesting point because, and that's one of the things that I think is heaps different with this game. Uh, Being at max level at the end of Hell, and then having a difficulty level that is where you're expected to be max level from the beginning of that difficulty level is very different from anything in Diablo 3, I guess. Like, um, you finished Hell before you got to max level, so there was always you could just keep grinding to get more levels, and you'd eventually be able to beat Hell. And it wasn't so, I guess, gear dependent. It seems like that was a lot easier than Inferno is, and I think that could be, part of an issue that's Diablo 3 faces. People just it being really hard to beat Inferno. Like it's a lot different. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah, it does.
yeah, I think it makes total sense.
Yeah. I mean, because that's kind of like I feel like I can't finish the game basically. Not that I can't, but that it's gonna take a lot of grinding to finish the game. Whereas in Diablo 2, you just keep slowly building your levels, and then eventually you'll be able to do it. You know. Um,
So, just is that pre-release? Is that what you wanted? Did you want it to be really hard?
um, well, I'm not like I wouldn't say that I'm a full-on hardcore gamer. So I'm not saying that I wanted it to be like super hard.
Mm.
But I guess it's kind of a weird thing because it's kind of like, well, at what point should it become super hard? Where's the point where it's okay for it to be really hard? And I think that it doesn't feel right, like it doesn't feel right that it's Inferno. Like it feels like it should be some extra part or something. I don't know if that's maybe people just need to change their perspective on that. Maybe they should look at Inferno as something that maybe they can't necessarily complete, or maybe it is that it should be more skill based rather than time based. Because at the
And it's
moment,
interesting because we've got two very different angles there. So
yeah,
you're talking about disinterest from somebody where you're at, where you haven't beaten the game yet,
yep,
but you just feel like it's just too hard without engaging the auction house or
yeah,
the gold auction house or your credit card. And then Chet's got the opposite point of view where he's just been smashing it, and what's the point anymore?
yep.
So yeah, it's just very interesting. You're coming at it from very, very different angles.
Um, yeah, but I think they're kind of related because it's kind of like for him, he's got nothing else to do once he's past that level, and I guess the question is like maybe what's after that should be the part where it gets super hard, if that makes sense. I don't know.
But yeah,
I,
I mean, you're always going to have that one step before, aren't you?
Yeah.
And one thing perhaps with Inferno that might be encouraging what you're talking about there is just like in terms of a lot of the drops, the way that they're structured is there's no point like doing certain things before Inferno. So, for example, just from the crafting point of view, you're not going to get your tomes of secrets in Helldiv. So,
Yep.
if you ever want to get those final upgrades with your blacksmith, you have to be in Inferno.
Yep.
And same with your crafting materials. If you want to have a chance of crafting the best stuff, you just have to be in Inferno.
Mm.
No point being in Hell. And I think perhaps that sort of encourages it a bit.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that just feel like you have to be there.
Yep.
Whereas if those things were like accessible to everyone, but then of course you would only get the highest frequency of that stuff at those very top tiers.
Mm.
Then that would be a little bit different, and make the margin, or if you had the margin a little bit larger than what it is now. But again, a stronger break, because you used to Act 1 and Act 2 being close.
Yep.
So when you go to Act 2 and you get your head cracked, and you can't handle it, then it's unfamiliar and it's strange.
Yep.
And it's like I should be there. It's so close, and whereas if it was like a whole new difficulty where all the drop types were essentially the same, it was just more lucrative. That might have had that gap.
Yep.
You still feel like you've clocked the game, or if it was just being able to run a repeat dungeon, or expanding on the existing game, it was like the random events would always appear, or you could get the pandemonium events in that case. That they're all different types of things that would feel like you've completed the end game, yet even though you've gotten there, you haven't been stopped at
Yep.
this really frustrating end of Act 1.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. I guess the randomness of the game gives it longevity. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I'm just saying, like, you're telling me that, you feel like you can't get to the end of the game, and it's just too hard to get there, and it's kind of a bit demoralizing. And then again, for Chet, it's a case of, there's nothing left for me to do now.
Yep.
So you've got to have something that caters to, to both of those.
Yeah. Well, it's not
Or
the
you ignore people like you and you just call Fuego is a scrub. He didn't deserve to be there anyways.
well, no, it's not. It's not that I don't think that I can do it or I feel like I can't do it. I know I can do it. It's more of a matter of time. Like I just don't have time, and I know that if I did have the time, I would have done it. Like it's just a matter of farming until I build the required amount of gear. That's
But do
all
you
it
feel
is.
like it's disinteresting?
Um, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Yeah. Cool. Um, well, okay. So this sort of leads into the whole itemization thing. Now, I think this is um, part of where the lack of interest comes from. That there isn't really that many interesting items. One of the problems being that legendary items are not very powerful and not all that interesting. Um, hopefully they're going to change that. It's still a ways off because it's happening in the 1.1 patch, which is the PvP patch. Um, but yeah, do you guys have any suggestions or what do you think the problem is in terms of like items not being interesting compared to like Diablo 2? Um, what was in Diablo 2 that was interesting about the items that's not in Diablo 3? It's probably a better way to say it.
I
Uh,
think there's sorry, I'll jump
right.
in. I think there's this again two different sides to it.
Hmm.
There's the straight up power
Yep.
that yeah they're piss weak. They're stupidly piss weak,
Yep.
and that's just really annoying. And then there's the lack of inventiveness. You'll never find one that will make you go, I can build this whole build around it.
Mm.
There's ones where like you can get increased movement speed on pants,
Yep.
and you can't normally get that. So there's that a little bit.
Hmm.
But like I remember when we were doing episode like 1.5 or or 2 or something, it was like can't wait for the item list to come out
Yeah.
because that's when we can actually start thinking about builds,
Yeah. Right.
and it wasn't that at all. It was that's when we can think about how obscure these items are going to be, like
Yeah. Right.
how worthless they are. So there's the power, and then there's just the lack of dynamics.
Yeah. I know what you
That's
mean. So like the lack of I guess aspects of the item that create builds that wouldn't be possible if that item didn't exist, basically,
yeah.
or wouldn't be feasible if that item didn't exist.
Yeah, or would like even if it didn't change your build, it might impact your playstyle like substantially. Like
Hmm.
like a 10% chance to stun or something on an item would be like, sure there would be builds that are around that, but you equip it, you're going to notice that right away,
Yep.
and your playstyle is going to be unintentionally.
Sorry, I missed that last bit. Going to be what?
Oh,
Sorry.
it's just like your playstyle will be affected unintentionally.
Oh, right. Okay.
You didn't plan your build around it. You just became really awesome, and every time things were in front of your
Yep.
face, they were too stupid to do anything. Because you've got this 10% chance to stun. Now that you can argue that's a stupid example and it's OP, but something like that would be one commensurate with the rate they drop, and two, it would be really different when you got it.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. So yeah. Hopefully the legendary items will get to a point where when you see a legendary drop, you're just excited because it's going to be awesome because
yeah.
that's how it should be, really.
And I mean, just imagine, if it had like you had boots that were like chance to molten for the next 10 seconds on hit.
Hmm.
How crazy would that be? It'd
That'd
be
be
like
pretty cool.
it triggered, great. Now I run around
Run
in a
around in a
circle.
circle. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And create
There was a
those.
guy on Reddit who'd made up some legendary items that had really interesting things like that. Like Natalia's had different things to do with demons and stuff like that, and would stop people from would resurrect the demon to fight for you for a while and things like that. Like
Yeah.
a bit more lore-based legendaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
Awesome,
hard to
interesting.
balance for sure. But like, the answer to balance is not don't make everything freaking useless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can't. How can they use balance that much really as an excuse? Because they've said that it's not meant to be super, hardcore game. It's really aimed more at casual. So
I think the point was they didn't want everyone, it wasn't the point where they want every barb to just have full IK set, They didn't want every demon hunter to use a wind force and,
Right.
use this ring and that ring and, where, because that's what it was like in Diablo 2,
Yep.
everyone had the same thing.
Yeah. Right.
So everyone had the rune worded armor where you could teleport, whatever that was, can't remember the name. But, it was like if you didn't have that, you were just stupid. And,
Yeah. Right.
so and I think they've got it right, like in terms of the mindset there, and the perfect rare should be better than the majority of uniques, if not all, if you build your build right. But there should be some cool stuff in there too, and they've just failed hard.
Right. Um, did you want to add anything to that legendary conversation, Ziggy? Thought you were
Well,
going to
just
say
in terms
something
of
there.
itemization in general,
Yep.
an interesting point is that there's actually a lot more variety in what each item can have affix-wise in Diablo 3 than there was in Diablo 2. Like, the list is a lot longer, but that also means there's a much longer list and much higher chance of getting items that just have a bunch of worthless stats on them, like gold fine, gold radius, thorns, regen armor, or something like that.
Yep.
But then you've also got items that are like you want because they've just got Hebrew based stats. The problem with having a list of, 4 base stats and then something else like life on heal or something is it just makes for boring items.
Yep.
If it was more limited in Diablo 2 you had like prefix and suffixes, I think, for items, and that limited the way that each item could roll.
Yep.
So there's a few limitations in Diablo 3, like, gloves can roll certain things that pants can't and stuff like that. But I think having more limitations in maybe like how many primary stats an item could roll, so it just doesn't have like 4 different types of armor
Yep.
instead of having, and it had some actually more interesting things on it that you could build and stuff around like that.
Yep.
And then I'm pretty hopeful or pretty optimistic for legendaries with the changes coming up.
Yep.
I think they're going to make them a lot more interesting. At least I hope they are.
Yep.
I would like to see some like passive abilities and things like that on items, like what we we're talking about with molten boots and things like that.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely an organization issue, and I talked about this recently in one of my own videos. That people blame me, like the real money auction houses and stuff like that, for the death of Diablo, but I think it's only sped up the realization that the item system is really boring.
Right.
There's no in-game content going on.
Yep. No, that's a good point.
Because people can get those items, people can get the higher level items quicker if they
Yep.
have the money or time to spend on gold and that.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
that actually,
Just
sorry, it touches on a point Chet made as well, like where the game starts at Inferno. Chet, I take it you were using the gold auction house at least?
No, I found all my gear before I killed Diablo.
You should.
Yeah, but see, that's a different issue. That's a class balance issue. Glass cannons were able to achieve that, whereas, that's why Huayo couldn't do it, because he was a monk, so he had to try and get so many more stats on his items before he could achieve that, whereas I could just get pure damage.
Yep.
so you could just get a good weapon and with like a good jam in it, and
So I just built
Yeah, lots of
craploads
attack
defense.
speed and crit.
yeah.
Okay, well, you screwed my point in the part there. But, I had heard that complaint as well, where it was just like, the game starts at Inferno, and it's just like, well, that was certainly like kind of how I felt as well, just, but I spent, some relatively small amount of gold, and I bought a 500 DPS dagger that I, used all the way through End of Nightmare and all of Hell, and, just pooed on everything. And, like I didn't need any skill. I didn't need to look at my build.
Yep.
So the game started in Inferno for me, which, I was really impatient. I really wanted to get there, so I didn't mind that. But yeah, I think, like I was listening to Flux talking in one of his podcasts, Flux from Ink Gamers, and he was just saying like how he's, using all self-found gear, and he actually has a hard time. And, he has to rework his strategies and stuff like that. So, it's not, it not only stretches out that time that you get to Inferno, but also maybe makes it more interesting.
I think that would definitely make the bottom half of the game much more interesting. Because the way I feel like you're very powerful from normal through probably even through hell in if you're using the auction house or maybe even found gear if you there's certain builds like what Trevor's doing. Um, Gear's really overpowered, but once you get to Inferno, it sort of slows down, and then you're really underpowered by comparison. Um,
Hmm.
it feels weird that the game's like bottom heavy when the idea is you're making this hero that can stomp faces and things like that. When it
Yep.
doesn't really end up happening in Inferno at all. And I think people are rushing, probably like maybe enjoying normal, but then rushing Nightmare and Hell just to get to Inferno content. And Gear is definitely lending to that playstyle by the fact that you can have such a good weapon, and that'll just take you through Nightmare and Hell, and you don't really have to even think about builds or anything like that. Like I
Yep.
try to actively think about my builds in the lower difficulties, but there really isn't that much point in it if you just spend like a couple thousand gold on the auction house and get some good gear. You just outgear everything.
Yep. So
Hmm.
you think that the game's a bit too gear dependent? Is that sort of what you're saying?
I don't have an issue with gear dependency, but um, maybe gear is pretty overpowered in the lower levels,
Yep.
but by comparison to what ends up happening at the end game.
Yep.
And just maybe the people getting disappointed with Inferno might be a part of them not enjoying the earlier parts of the game.
Hmm.
Like
Okay.
even with self-found gear, you'll almost well, I don't know. I've never gotten peak. I haven't gotten to peak gear, but as I understand it, you'll never get to be as powerful as you were when you played normal difficulty.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
Yeah.
and and I suppose there should be a point where it's like it goes through this. Let's use this webcam. Goes through this huge trough where you're going down, and then it should sort of maybe sharply tick up at the end. Maybe not in terms of hours, but in terms of like in terms of progression. Where by the end of it. Even once you've been farming Acts 3 and 4, you should actually feel like you're pooing on everything, and you feel more powerful than you did in normal difficulty.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. Well,
That doesn't
that's
seem to happen, though, does it?
no.
That doesn't happen at all, though, does it?
That's not my understanding. No.
Yeah. No. Um. Well. Okay. I'll just quickly want to make a point about something Ziggy was saying before with the items in Diablo 2 having like an affix and a suffix. Um, One of the things that I think makes the game less interesting is that an item isn't really powerful based on what it is so much. It's more about the item level and whether or not it's rolled high stats or not. It's all about rolling those high stats. I think it'd be nice if you could look at an item name when it dropped and have a much better idea of like how good it was going to be. Um, Rather than it just being about, oh, okay, I've got this. Hopefully, it'll roll top stats. Um, so yeah,
Hang on, am I being stupid? Isn't that the case for magical?
For
uh,
magic, or do you mean like something of wounding and that?
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
blues.
So you have an idea of yeah magical items what they are when it drops. But what I mean is in Diablo 2, I think for me it was about finding particular items rather than um, trying to
Okay.
find anything and then hoping that it rolls a high stat. You know what I mean?
Oh, right, yeah,
So,
okay.
I think that's because you had a really good mixture of legendaries, rares,
Yeah.
blues, and set pieces in Diablo 2. But it pretty much, I don't know, I'm all decked out in rares usually most of the time.
yep,
Very rarely do I use anything else.
yep. So
Yeah.
anyway, I guess the point is that it comes down to whether or not the item rolls high stats or not a lot of the time, and that sucks. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, well, I know, when you see uh, dark orange. I don't know. It's like first P in the morning color orange, and it's like that should be like yes,
Yeah, yeah.
this could be fantastic, and yeah, it's just kind of meh.
It's like,
And so
well,
the,
hopefully
the
it's
the
not
dream
crap.
item is going to be, you know, it's going to be done in a run of 100 items, and well, whatever, however many items, two entries full of items, and you'll identify them all as in a bunch at the end.
Yep.
And that it's also that I read this on Reddit the other day. Somebody made a very good point in terms of when you get your little trigger, like your problem gambler type trigger, it's like you're getting that when you identify the items at the end of your run.
Right.
Or when you're searching something on the auction house to see, oh yeah, is this actually of any value? Never when you actually kill a monster do you actually feel good.
Right. Right. So what you're talking about there is that moment when you're actually enjoying the game, I guess. And I think
when the endorphins hit,
yeah,
you haven't just killed a monster. You're in town and you're running around and you're going identify.
Yep.
Do that all as a bunch, and then you're just going through this sorting processing that you have. You're going to your vendor.
Oh, he's cut out.
Oh, I
Uh
lost your mic again.
oh. He's still.
There you go.
I just dropped the thought hammer there. I can't repeat it. You're going through this process, and then the endorphins are just all wrong.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think
That's,
should be when you
and that's essentially what itemization is. It's the reward system in the game is screwed up.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
and sifting through stuff to find those rewards isn't really the way it's supposed to feel.
Yep.
It's supposed to be it's supposed to be rewarding when you kill things.
Yep.
It's not happening, is it?
I'll tell you what, one small incremental step they could do to help that would be mass identify. That would be really nice. I used to go to Kane
Bring
for
back
that.
Deckard Kane.
Yeah.
I guess that
Give
would
me a
take.
Staff of Resurrection, bring him back.
Bring the what is it, an enchantress person back and have her just identify stuff. I'd be happy. She doesn't have to do a crafting system.
The mystic, you mean?
The Mystic.
The mystic,
Yeah.
The mystic sounds like she could identify
Buxom
things.
Mystic.
Yep. And that
Buxom one.
that leads into another point. So there's a lot of things that seem to have been like taken out of the game just before it hit the shelves, basically, or soon before it hit the shelves. And the Mystic's one of them. Another one is the talisman, which I can't remember. It was like a thing that sat in your inventory. Is that right?
It was just a big fat charm and you could stick like things in it.
Yep.
So yeah, it'd sit in there and it'd just to give you like little passives,
Yep.
same as charms did.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as clunky in your inventory, and I think the whole point was they didn't want you to trade off inventory space all the time, so that people would run around with one slot. This is when legendaries mattered. In Diablo 2, and you'd run around with almost only like one slot.
Infantry charms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I think Talisman would be a good addition to the game. It would certainly go somewhat towards solving the magic find situation. Like,
Yep.
put a lot of magic find in terms of charms. You could just deck out your Talisman with charms, and I guess it's still going to have a negative impact on your character's abilities if you're not putting fighting stuff in there. But I guess if people are switching out charms all the time, it's going to be the same problem, isn't it?
Yep.
But we got to pay for something for this expansion, so.
Well, that's okay. That brings me on to something else which I feel pretty passionate about. And one thing is that I hope to God that they're not leaving a lot of this stuff out just for expansions, because that's just
Well, we saw the exact same thing happen with StarCraft 2 and Heart of the Swarm with the anyone remember when StarCraft was first coming out, when it first came out, and I'm talking about the paid map making system arcade thing that they're testing now for Heart of the Swarm. That was meant to be in the original game, and they pushed it back until it was for the expansion pack.
Well, I mean, I guess there's two things. There's new ideas and there's old ideas. Old ideas should be in the game. Like, there's things in Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction, like mechanics that aren't in this game that I think would make the game a lot better, and I hope that they're not holding back those mechanics for an expansion, because it's not like it's a new thing, you know what I mean?
Oh my god, I worked it out. so we got 2 expansions coming allegedly for Diablo, and like definitely for StarCraft.
So too,
I think that's what they said.
Yeah, two.
ages ago.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's not like locked in or anything. But final expansion for these, you get BattleNet 1.0. Boom.
It goes back. They bring
Oh
back
man.
content from old games.
BattleNet 1.0, you can connect to whichever BattleNet you want. Bam.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's sort of Blizzard sort of reminds me of EA and The Sims occasionally. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Sims series. This sounds
Oh, I
bear with
just
me
I
for
just
this
got
one.
the Paddy Carey.
It's
What is
It's
it?
relevant. It's relevant. But okay, so you had The Sims 1, and I played The Sims 1, as pretty much everyone did back in the day. And then you had like your pets expansion packs and your holidays expansion packs and all of that stuff. And then The Sims 2 came out, and they took all of that content out of the game and then re-released it as expansion packs again. And then the same thing happened with Sims 3 again. You have to buy the
Yeah.
Sims 3 pets as well as Sims 2 pets and Sims 1 pets to get pets
Uh,
in the games. And I feel like Blizzard's doing the exact same thing here. Like taking pandemonium events out of Diablo 3 and then bringing them back in the next expansion pack, which I think will happen.
oh shit! Don't talk
The
about
Sims,
EA.
it's The Sims. It's The Sims for hardcore gamers.
No, for casual. Sims for casual gamers. Don't forget.
Oh dear.
Sims players are probably a bit more hardcore than most Diablo players, I reckon.
Yeah, in terms of hours spent, yeah, like, Chet, step aside, man. You're 500 meat for nothing.
Yeah, the real dollars are in The Sims. Cool.
People who grow a family from first generation all the way through to 20th generation of Sims, they're hardcore gamers.
Um, now, one more point that I had, PvP. So, hopefully that's going to bring, breathe some more life into the game. Um, so how do we feel about PvP? I'll start with Chet because he haven't said anything in a while.
Probably don't want to start with me. I wasn't that into PvP in Diablo 2, so I wasn't really looking forward to it in Diablo 3 anyway.
Were you
They
not
got a
in?
lot of work to balance it if they want to keep players interested with PvP.
Were you not into? Like, did you just not enjoy it, or did you just never really play it in Diablo 2?
Um, no, I never. I don't think I'd enjoy it with the clicky isometric kind of view thingy.
Have you ever
Like
played a
in
MOBA game before?
a MOBA game.
Like Dota?
You serious?
I don't know what a MOBA means, man.
League
Okay.
of
Oh, you're
Legends.
awesome.
Get out. No, never. I'm joking. Okay, cool.
Dota means Dota
Never mind.
and variants of Dota.
Oh, no, I never played those.
It's what was the LoL decided to call the genre instead of just calling it variations of Dota.
I thought Total Biscuit
Oh,
made
I
it up,
see.
but maybe
Total
not.
likes that were all called for a
Oh
while.
well. Anyway, so I'll get raged at later.
I mean, I PvP'd in WoW. That's all I did in WoW, and I just find the combat and the game mechanics for PvP in WoW to be just more engaging. I don't think I would play Diablo PvP over WoW PvP personally. That's just me though.
Okay, that's interesting
I think
because
for myself, I think Diablo 3 PvP could be really fun because it could be really quick and I don't know.
I think
Could be quite fun to play, but I want two PvPs. I want your softcore normal PvP and maybe have leagues and ladders and things for that and whatever, and like some sort of PvP level thing or something like that. And then I want a hardcore PvP system where your character dies in there, and then you're leveling up for level 30 minimum gladiatorial battles, and you level up 5 characters for it, and
that,
take them all through there and see how far your team can get.
it would
Permanent.
that would just be awesome. I just hope that happens
That's
so
my aim.
much.
Oh.
Yeah, and everything they're doing is like about combating efficiency, and it's less like or combating. Everyone's doing this, everyone's doing goblin farming, so we want to combat that. And it's like freaking hell, just add something fun.
Yeah,
You know?
right.
Like
Yeah.
add something that is just like stupidly ridiculously fun. Like this game is the whole game's designed for a kill all the zombies mod. And
Right.
all they need to do is just make an endless dungeon, and bam,
Yep.
where you never have to run to town, you never have to do this, you never have to do that, and it doesn't even need to have uniques in it, right? So it's not efficient. It's just not.
Mhm.
You'll go there for fun,
Yep.
and it'll be way cool.
Yeah, I really wish there was more of that sort of stuff in the game, like just fun things, more events. Those events are awesome. I
It's
just
designed for them, It's
yeah,
those events. They're fantastic.
yeah, so much fun. Um,
Stop taking your game so seriously, Blizzard. Put some fun in there.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
the PvP thing I'm really looking forward to. I played a little bit of PvP in D2, not heaps. It was always casual, just with my mates, like me and my friend who had a barbarian, and would play my sorceress. We just played tag, with me teleporting around and him leaping on top of me. And it was pretty much if he could hit me, I'd be down in one shot, but he'd have to catch me first. With a teleport with no cooldown, you can imagine that's pretty difficult. So that was always fun, and I really enjoyed that. And I think that MOBA games are like the closest thing to that D2 PvP, and I think that's why I enjoy playing those games, because it's the closest thing to the point and click PvP kind of where you have that character that you build. So yeah, it's interesting what Chet was saying there about you know preferring WoW PvP over Diablo PvP, because I pretty much feel the exact opposite. I hate WoW PvP because it's not like real time, because it's like all turn based and it's slow and feels clunky to me. It's not like action based. Um, so yeah, I can't wait for the PvP patch, and I hope that it ends up being more competitive than they expect it to be. What do you,
Well, it said, I can't remember. One of the Blizz devs was saying they don't want it to be an esports game, but it's going to be entirely in the hands of the casters and the community. If people choose to cast the games on like their YouTube channels and stuff, then it will have a chance as sort of like a casual esport or even maybe a more serious esport. But
yep.
I don't know. It's not a good sign for it when the developers aren't interested in supporting it, because developers, they're really interested in supporting StarCraft 2 as an esport,
Hmm.
but they don't want to cannibalize their own market. Fair enough, but
And I don't get it. It's like they say, it's we're not supposed to be doing it this way. This is not what Diablo's about, or we we can't balance it. And we're never going to balance it perfectly. Well, what the hell did they do for Diablo 2 that balanced it? So they had this great system in Diablo 2 where you went out to the Blood Moor, and then you had to like keep a certain distance and then start fighting. The system, there was no system, but people did it and they had fun, and it was probably the crappiest form of gameplay for
Hmm.
something like that like I've ever encountered. Like
Yep.
Chet's saying it's not as good as WoW. Well, people just didn't give a crap if it was the best form. They
Yep.
they just did it because they wanted to do it in Diablo.
Hmm.
So I don't know why they can't just take it a little bit of a step further. Just enable us to do what we want.
Yep.
Just don't restrict us and give us, the ability to have replays
Hmm.
and spectators. It's not rocket science,
Yeah.
and the only thing I pray is that the serious approach that they're taking to there's an end game issue might actually help them to go, well, all right, let's just enable them and see what happens. And I tell you what, stuff's going to happen. Someone's going to be casting YouTube, blah blah blah. Like
Hmm.
Sigurd was saying, somebody's going to be making pro teams, maybe not pro teams, but like guilds, little casual guilds,
Yep.
around this stuff, and they're going to do it. and They're going to love it. Then people are going to want to be like them, and it's
Mm.
going to change the gear and all of that. Give us a ladder system,
Yeah.
just enable us to do what we want to do,
Yep.
and then we'll go and do it. And some people will be into it. Not everyone will. If it's not balanced, we'll go play something that is.
Yeah. Right.
But
Yeah. Hopefully.
we're going to play in spite of it.
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, I think that they're definitely open to changes, because they obviously like they've demonstrated that already by taking suggestions from the community. And hopefully it's not a case of, them. I mean, it obviously is. They've obviously built this game to be a different market to World of Warcraft and StarCraft, and that's why it is the way it is. But maybe it will take a huge loss of player base for them to actually go and change it. Um, so that they do keep those players and it is fun. So yeah. Anyway,
um, people were like really, really down about this and like the way the game is, and they don't foresee any bright future, and they're burning their game copies, and you know,
Really? The people actually burning
protesting
their
out in
game
front of
copies?
Blizzard Studios and stuff like that.
Naked
But
dancers.
I'm like really 100% confident that the game's going to end up being really good. Like
Yep.
a year, it could take like a year or two or three or four or five, but
Or
the game,
expansions.
Hmm.
yeah, but probably by the time both the expansions come up and then a few major patches, the game's going to be really awesome. Like I'm just enjoying playing the I just want to end on a positive note, but
Yep.
I'm really enjoying the game in its current state and like really aware of all the issues of it, but
Hmm.
I'm pretty confident that all that sort of stuff's going to be sorted out
Yep.
and there's going to be sick end game content later on. Just not now. So for now, I'm just enjoying the early and mid game content because that's all there is to enjoy.
Yep.
And later, I'll enjoy PvP and end game.
Yeah.
I think
Just
it's
for
interesting that you've got that positivity about it, especially because you play hardcore, and like I mean I think that's at least for every American, right? Not every American, but a substantial number of Americans, right? That I don't see why that's not their end game.
Yeah. Right.
I don't. I yearn to
people.
play hardcore properly, without
Mm,
like without a huge ping and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like we've had one guy do it. No one else has actually claimed to beat Diablo on hardcore. Yet there's forums upon forums of pages upon pages of people saying there's no end game. You
Yep.
know, they're not all
yeah, hardcore
Australians.
really is the end game for me. There's so much more content
Yeah,
there, but eventually it'll still have the same problem, except your characters are just going to die and it'll take a long time to get back there. But
maybe it's people can't handle the stress. I don't know.
I think many people that I've talked to about hardcore and asked why I play hardcore, and they ask me like, is there better item drops in hardcore? And I'm like, no. And I think they just have the wrong mindset and approach
Yep.
to hardcore. Like, what's the point when you die? That sort of thing. I
Yep.
don't know if it's just gaming history, like their gaming history compared to my gaming history, or just a mindset thing. Like, I had my first serious hardcore death the other day, and I was like, oh no, because I was really, really stupid death, just like Arcane. I was overconfident because I'd spent all this money on gear, and I was like, just stomping with a barbarian, just like blah 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 blah, and I was like sick, not really paying attention. Then I just got killed by these Arcanes, and I'm like, this game is awesome. I just died. It took me like 10 hours to get there, and I just died, and I was like, that is so good. that that game, that's what makes me like feel like I'm alive when I'm playing a game rather than
It's
playing
definitely,
softcore and not.
yeah, it's a
Yeah,
thrilling experience.
softcore's I don't know. It should be practice mode. Why don't people see it that way for the real game? But people can have fun doing whatever they want. But yeah, there's definitely the content there in hardcore.
Hmm. Yep.
That
Cool.
mindset.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm pretty excited about the future of the game anyway. I guess people's main complaint is the fact that there's so many of these issues that are like blaring you, staring you right in the face. And it's kind of like, what happened? Like, how did they not see this as a problem, and it feels very not finished. But anyway, hopefully, I'm pretty confident that it'll get better. So I am
I don't know
excited.
that it feels not finished at all. Like there's all these people that, again, it's like this stuff, blah, the game's, in beta, in alpha, whatever, and it's just, I saw an interview with, who was it? The founder guy from one of the four founders for Diablo 1 and 2. What was his name?
Mac Schaefer.
Yes, thank you, thank you. This was in our little topic list for like 3 weeks ago, but we didn't get to do it. And it was just like he was just talking about Torchlight too.
Ah, yeah.
And but of course the interviewer just kept asking him, are you like rubbing your hands together, waiting to get your release done because of all this bad press? And he was saying, well, all this crap was happening with Diablo too. Servers were freaking messed upon release, and
Yeah.
we didn't have all these systems in place, and it was really Ember. It was just if you don't remember, like Diablo 2, if you wanted to be any good, if you wanted to be remotely competitive, you were playing Barbarian. for ages. It was like 2 months before there was a point in playing a non-barbarian if you were trying to compete with anyone in terms of progression. Like it was really imbalanced. It was all whirlwind barbs. Everyone was a whirlwind barb. And and it was the same for Hammerdans for like a year and a half later on.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people saying that it's really broken, and I just this is sort of the Blizzard way. They're slowly going to get it better. And I think they've got the big stuff right. Everyone says the combat's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's so fundamental.
yeah, exactly. And I think the benefits and the costs in terms of the auction houses is still kind of remains to be seen. I'm not convinced that that's what's killing the game at all.
Yep.
Me either.
Yeah.
Chet, did you actually ever engage the real money auction house at any point?
Yeah, just to sell some items. That
Just
was
to
about
sell?
it.
Yeah.
Oh man, he sold a ring for $100. It was awesome. I don't know anything else
Yeah,
about it.
I did.
Awesome. What was it, a Justice Lantern or something?
No, it was just a rare ring. I can't even remember the
nice.
stats on it.
That's
Sweet.
cool. Money back.
Yep.
Yeah, I've made my money back on the game, but that's a different story.
I
Yeah,
have
no, well, me
You were
too. I think, and I wanted to give a bit of a salute to Force as well, because he
yes.
said, Force is actually he had a great podcast, the Diablo Cast on YouTube that I've been listening to for like 2 years or something now. And he'd been doing a great job. He lost interest. It was epic fanboy for a long time, lost interest. And he said that Austin wasn't just blaming the auction house. He said that the key moment for him where he realised it wasn't fun anymore was when he bought something on the real money auction house. So it's a bit hard because I haven't actually bought anything on it. I haven't bought anything that where I hadn't already made the money from selling stuff. But I didn't. So it's kind of just like a different currency for me. I still think that remains to be seen. I think for some people, I totally get that feeling, where they're finding that progression's really hard, and that might be disengaging for some people. It's just well, how much money do I have is what this game's about. And PvP, I think, might actually explore that a bit more. But I'm not convinced that that's the underlying issue. I think that they've got the gameplay right. I think they've got these other functions that are cool, and aren't all that different to what used to be the case already in terms of trading systems and third party auction houses. And I've got a lot of hope for what they're going to do. Hopefully, they can do the chat system, get that fixed up, and fix some of these.
Yeah.
Well,
Some community type stuff would be really nice.
Yeah. And just focus a little bit more on having some stuff in there that's just so fun that you have to do it.
Yep.
You sort of led into an interesting point there. Something you said earlier. I can't remember what it was, but you got me thinking about the reason why we're talking about this in the first place. People saying the amount of people that are not playing the game, that are leaving the game, and stuff like that. And I was thinking about that and reading about that recently. And something interesting I read was that the majority of players, it was like some ridiculous amount of players on Diablo 2, only ever completed normal mode once. That's all they played of Diablo. And I think that's like a lot of the people now that are leaving Diablo 3. Like, I think it's very, very normal the way that the game's happening. And the devs themselves have said that the loss of players is like better than what they see from WoW patches, things like that, like the player losses in this amount of time.
Yep.
After a patch comes out. Oh, sorry, a expansion pack comes out on WoW.
Yep.
So, I really don't think the game is dying.
Right.
Despite all the outrage and everything.
There's I think one interesting thing is also there's been a long time since Diablo 2, and games have really changed.
Yeah.
And everyone's making this comparison that it's not unfair, but it's also it should be seen in that with that in mind, not forgetting that 12 years have passed and games are different. When Diablo 2 had its its storyline, like I a lot of people say it was amazing. I think it was good. Uh, I don't think by modern standards it's great. There are some games out there now that are just have the most engaging storylines that are just incredible. I think Diablo 3 is a huge improvement on Diablo 2 in a lot of respects. Like you get to run around with the characters and whatnot. Sure, they kill Cain a bit cheap, but spoiler alert if you haven't beaten Act One. But it's like I think that you relative to other games, the Diablo 3 story isn't that great. Relative to modern games that are no.
Oh no, his mic's cutting out again. That's lame. I think you need the wired version of that headset.
Yeah, I think I might.
Yeah.
But in any case, just relative to its modern peers in every way, things are a bit different, and I think you just need to keep that in mind.
Yep.
When pissing on the game.
Yeah, right. Cool. Well, I think all the points have pretty much been made.
We've done all of the points.
Well, yeah, all of the points that could ever be made on this subject, you've heard them here in the last hour.
That's it. Diablo's finished, everyone. We've talked about everything.
You can go back to WoW now. No, don't go back to WoW. I'm joking. We were going to talk about the Magic Find thing as well, but it's just getting on a bit too long. So maybe we'll talk about that next week. We'll probably actually have more to talk about because they may have actually made a decision at that point as to what's going to happen.
That'd be interesting to see.
Yes. Cool. So, how often are you playing now, Chet? Once a week?
Yeah, about once a week.
Cool.
That's nice. I think that's a good amount to be playing this
Yep.
after that sort of initial burnout.
It's a healthy amount. It's the amount of time that you should be eating Maccas once a week. Not even that much.
Shouldn't be eating
Not even
Maccas
that much. You shouldn't be eating it at all. Just forget I said that.
It all depends on your rate of consumption.
Let's not get into that.
How many chicken and cheeseburgers you have?
It's so cheap.
So good. They have the price $3 though. They were $2.
Are you
before.
serious?
Oh,
Okay,
I
let's
know.
not-
It
Hey,
On
pains
a
me.
percentage basis, that's awful.
Let's not advertise for McDonald's.
The McDonald's Herald.
Yeah. Cool. So this has been the Diablo Herald episode 11. If you want to watch more of our content, you can find us on youtube.com/Diabloherald. We record these episodes live on Twitch TV/Diabloherald. And you can also send us an email if you've got any questions or things you'd like us to mention on the show. It's just diabloherald@gmail.com. You can also get us on Twitter at Diabloherald. And these guys do some other stuff on YouTube. Ziki, what do you do on YouTube?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube. I'm mostly doing like auction house guides and stuff because that's where a lot of my fun's coming from at the moment. So YouTube Ziggy Starcraft is the channel, so check that out. I'm trying to release like a video every day of different Diablo things, news and guides and discussions and whatever else is going on. And I'm also on Twitter at Ziggy Starcraft as well.
Cool. And Highlander?
Yep. You can catch me on YouTube. I am also mainly doing auction house documents at the moment, mainly for the same reason. But you can catch me now youtube.com/ScottishMoo. But as of next Monday, you will be catching me on youtube.com/Highland Cow Gaming.
Cool.
And right now you can follow me on Twitter, which is just at HighlanderSC. And yeah, on that channel and in those tweets as well, I tweet about anything achievement related. And I'm also going to be doing a market watch series, kind of like what you see at the end of the news, where they just say this went up and that went down, and this went down because that happened. So I'm going to be trying to do that, and I may or may not wear a suit. That's yet to be decided.
And actually, that would be awesome.
Cash guys, watch it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's pros and cons. I don't know if I can Well, if I just do it when I come home from work, that'll kind of work.
Sit up.
Anyways, so before I go, I wanted to do a quick shout out as well to Pussy Boots, Incendia, and Intrepid for being awesome. And I did want to note that we had some comments in chat. We did have a question whether we are going to get Leah's mum back in pink in an expansion. I believe the answer is yes. And they are fans of all things pink, including pink achievements, so 4 points to them.
Right.
Yeah,
Cool.
I don't know.
Ah, Incendia.
Oh,
You silly person. Oh, look.
Many-
Oh, how about
To
that?
drink pink.
Um,
I'm a fan. Buy it. It's good.
achievement unlocked. Pink reference at the ready.
now, we can't plug Chet because he doesn't do anything on YouTube because he doesn't have a webcam. So,
Chet's here. You can find Chet here. He's just hanging around being a boss and stuff.
Yeah, if you find me in the Mumble server, if you want someone to run something,
Hey.
I'll happily jump in Diablo 3 and do it. But
yeah, he's pretty
otherwise,
nice.
I'm just watching cats on YouTube.
He's nice enough to actually like sit here for an hour and talk to us. So.
Cats on YouTube.
Pink cat. Onto pink cats.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
See
Bye.
yous.
Catch
See ya.